good afternoon, good evening, probably good morning, because I think most of you are probably in my same time zone as you're watching this live. If you're not watching this live, then hi, just hi. Mm. It is 11 a.m. for me, just good timing for the coffee. And today I have a few coffee topics to talk about. But then also, we're going to continue working on that Ruby SDK for OpenFGA. So we're going to start with that. We're going to start with the coffee, actually. So I have a few things to talk about regarding coffee. The first thing is about my improvement with latte art. And I have a picture here from a coffee I made yesterday. Because you probably don't know this, but I am into latte art. I want to get better at it. And so I've been trying to learn how to make like hearts and tulips and whatnot. And so yesterday I made this. And let me see if you can see it properly. You can. I made that. And not only did I do that, I made it with almond milk, which is a little bit more complicated than using either regular milk or oat milk. And so I'm very proud for doing that. The one I did today was a failure. So as you can see, there's nothing here. It's just, but count your wins. And so that's about that part of the coffee conversation. Another thing I wanted to talk about is, I don't know if you've noticed, I have a couple holes here in my background. That's because I have a couple books here I want to talk about. Because one of my colleagues the other day pointed out that I have coffee books behind me, and that is totally intentional. Not specifically for this live stream, but just I have them because I like them, and I now use them for that. So the first book that I've got, it was actually a gift, but I really wanted this book for a while. It is How to Make the Best Coffee at Home by James Hoffmann. And if you're into coffee, you probably know James Hoffmann. If you don't know who James Hoffmann is, I highly recommend that you go check out his videos, because not only he is a coffee nerd who explains everything about coffee in like a very easy to digest way, he also has a very like nice tone of voice. So I find it personally very relaxing. But yeah, this is the first book that I got about coffee, and I really like it because if you can see, it has a lot of images and it comes with recipes. Oh, there was a picture of James there. Wait. Yeah, this is him. But yeah, highly recommend that you look into that. This is a nice book. It's also like very pretty, as you can see, and it comes in many languages. I have it in English, but I'm pretty sure there's one in Spanish, there's one in like any language. Let me actually, I want to add this to my stream, and I also wanted to add well, that's fine. I don't need to add it. I was gonna add a link to James Hoffmann, but I'm pretty sure you can find him. The other book that I have is actually newer. I've had the Best Coffee at Home for a while, and this was recommended to me, El Arte del Café, so the art of coffee, I guess is the name in English. This was recommended to me by my latte art teacher, because yes, I do. I've done latte art classes. that's how obsessed I am with coffee. And even when I went there to have that class, he was like, "Are you like into opening a coffee shop?" And I'm like, "No, I'm just I like it." But he recommended this book, and I have a little bookmark here. This one is very, I don't know how to say it, but like it's very easy to read. Not only is it also full of images and graphics about coffee data and that kind of stuff. But you also have different recipes for different coffee methods. So there's some for what's this? Like so like an electric coffee machine. There's some for a V60. There's more data there. There's information here about roasting coffee if you're into that. And so this is a very complete book. So the against the James Hoffman one, this one is more about how you can make the best coffee at home. So you have different recipe for different methods, but this one has the whole information about coffee from the moment um, is on the ground, from roasting to actually making it at home. So another book that you can take a look into, The Art of Coffee. I hope that's the name in English. I assume it is. All right. And that's pretty much what I have today for my coffee conversation. I think we can go back to, oh, I see a comment, but I don't see, like I see a comment, but I don't see the content of the comment. Oh yeah, oh now I can see if I show it here. Hi Jesus, how you doing? Thank you for being here and watch me ramble about coffee. So now I'm gonna move my streaming situation to my secondary screen, and I can start sharing my screen and talk about what's been going on. So sharing screen, entire screen, this one right here. So let's see, there it is. Okay, this is not even the repo that I want to talk about, but let's go back to it. Let's go into my Ruby SDK one. So last week, I think the last thing we were doing was around the authorization models endpoints. And as a reminder, for anyone who is new here, I think Jesus, this might be your first time here, I'm not sure. But what I'm doing is I'm building a Ruby SDK for OpenFGA, and OpenFGA is this. Wow, my zoom is insane here. Let me see. Yeah, 150. Okay, let's put it like 110. And OpenFGA is this relationship-based access control system that you can implement. Is open source, and they already have a few SDKs for Go, Python, .NET, and whatnot. I think there are a couple more. But there's not one for Ruby yet. And because this is open source, I thought, well, maybe I can help out on that. Oh, come on. My Mac's like, what are you doing? So what I'm doing right now to provide context for anyone watching is I am building the like a wrapper for these endpoints here. We already work on the stores endpoints. These are ready. Last week, I started working on the authorization model endpoints, which is these three, basically to create an authorization model, get an authorization model, and get a list of authorization models. Oh, okay. So Jesus is saying this is actually your second time here. That's pretty nice to hear. I'm glad. On the first live session, that first live session was questionable. I think I'm getting better, and I know that because I come less and less prepared, and that to me means I'm more willing to, just show you the reality of what I'm doing without having to prepare a lot. If that makes sense. But then, thank you for being here. So going back to the authorization models, let me show you what I did. I have my pull request here and something failed. We'll see what that was. And this has been ready for review. So let's take a look. I think I'm gonna go to the code straight away because I might get like, yeah, I don't feel like having the difference because I did change some stuff. So here's the code. Here, I think I can zoom in. Let me close this so I can see my screen. Make sure this is actually readable. Yeah, that's better. No, that's actually maybe too much. Okay. So things that change from the code that I did last week to this one. The first thing was how we interact with the APIs internally. And so I think last week I was putting a lot of stuff on the OpenFGA client. And this OpenFGA client is actually how you as a developer would interact with this SDK. So I put here like all the methods regarding making requests, handling errors, and whatnot. And talking with my colleague Steve, we realized that's actually not necessary to put there because this is not something that to be exposed, sort of say. And so what we have now is an API client where we have all the situation, and then here we're only exposing or we will be exposing all the APIs. So far, it's just the stores and the authorization models API. So if I go to the API client file, what's going on here is this is receiving the API URI, and that's how we're going to instantiate it. And then here I have my make request method, raise error from response, and then the methods that I got from the generated code, which I will talk a little bit about this in a bit after I explain what happened in the previous weeks, in the previous week. And then now in my stores API, I'm passing the API client. And so I'm just calling those methods from here in each of the methods. So in order to interact with the API, you can do things like this. So for example, you could do OpenFGA client dot. I mean, you have to initialize, have an instance of this, but then once you have your client, you can do things like client.stores.create or client.authorization models.create.get, and whatnot, which feels quite idiomatic for Ruby, and I really like this approach. Hello, how you doing, Daniel? Hi to you. If you have any questions, let me know. And if this is your first time here, also let me know. So yeah, this feels good to me. But yeah, so I did that refactor on my stores API, and then I also had to update my tests, obviously. And then regarding the authorization models API is quite similar. We do have 3 endpoints only, which is create, list, and get. And I also added some error handling here in case you don't pass the store ID, because when you create an authorization model, you need to pass the store ID in which that authorization model will be. And I think that's pretty much it, what happened last week. I also created some tests for this, and they live here under spec, OpenFGA API, and then we have all the tests here. I don't want to get into them right now because I want to talk about the discussions I've had this week with my colleagues. So basically, there are, let's say, 2 ways you can have an SDK for OpenFGA. You can either build it yourself, which is how I'm doing it right now. Well, that's actually not entirely true, but yeah, you can build it yourself, or you can generate it using either the OpenAPI generator or the actual OpenFGA generator. And my thing with generated code is that it might feel a little bit hard to read for me. But then what I was thinking this week is that doesn't necessarily mean that because I cannot read it so easily, it's going to offer a less valuable developer experience for the person using it. And so something that I wanted to do today was actually dive into the generated code that we have, not my own code, and see how that experience is in comparison to the experience that I'm creating right now. So like I said, the experience I'm creating right now is so far allowing developers to do something like client stores create, blah, 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 right? And so I want to compare how this feels in comparison to using the generated code. And like I said, there are two ways you could generate this. One is with the, I think I have it here on, I forked it so I don't mess up with anyone's code. Let me see. Where are you? Let me see. It's probably, how did I call it? I don't remember. My repos, I have a bunch of things here. So this one. So one way is by generating your SDK using the OpenAPI generator, because OpenFGA is built using OpenAPI, so you could generate it with that. But OpenFGA also has its own generator. So if we go to github.com and I go to OpenFGA, yeah, let me just go to any OpenFGA and I'll go here and I'll show you. I'll find the generator here. I'm sure SDK generator. So you can either use the OpenAPI one or this one. And what me and my colleague were thinking, okay, let's each test any of those and see how the experience is in comparison to what we're building, right? So my colleague is going to try on this one. So I'm not gonna do this one myself, and I'm going to try on the OpenAPI one, which is the one that that I have here. I want to think that they're pretty similar. I'm just guessing the SDK generator from OpenFGA adds more things on top of the OpenAPI code just to make it more, about OpenFGA. So it's more specific to OpenFGA, right? So, and the thing about this is that whenever there's a new version of an SDK, they can just regenerate it with this. And so there's a caveat here whether you build it yourself or generate it. If you build it yourself, there's a risk of having, or like every time OpenFGA releases a new feature, that might not be implemented into your manually made SDK until someone actually implements it, versus generating it, you will always have that feature parity there. So that's why I'm exploring both options, because I think they're both valid. It's a matter of understanding what works best for what we want to do. So with that said, let's get into this. So my goal with this would be to build this into a gem and use it locally. So that's what I want to do. And in fact, not only do I want to use it locally, but I might also integrate this into a project that I have that is basically a Rails API. Let me see if I have it here somewhere. Here. It's a Rails API. Oh my goodness, what is up with this window? Let's close things, close everything. Calm down. And I have an OpenFGA service. And if you see, this is literally just making raw requests using net HTTP to the OpenFGA endpoint. So my goal would be, how does it feel when I use the generated SDK into this file? Because this is the experience that a developer will have when they use mine as well. So I want to compare those two. That's the goal. So the first thing I'm going to do is try to build that into a gem. So I'm going to open that. Let me see if I have it here already. Oop, my terminal is in my other screen, so let me bring it back here. Do I have OpenFGA Ruby? Yeah, I have it here. So let me open this in VS Code and have some coffee. I didn't open the right folder. Wait. I want to open the OpenFGA OpenAPI generator. This is what I want to open. I swear every week my laptop is like, please make it stop. It's getting slower and slower. Let me zoom in a bit. There we go. So what we have here is just a normal gem, right? Here's our gem spec. Okay. I don't think we've changed anything here. This is just the code generated as it is. So I'm gonna try and just generate this into a gem. Let me see if I remember how to do this, because I always forget. I think it's gem build, and then I pass the gem spec, which is called, what is it called? OpenAPI client gem spec. Okay, it built a gem, which means that now in here we will have an OpenAPI client version 1.0.0.gem. So if I try to install that gem, well, I don't know why I did bundle install. I meant to do gem install. It says that it's successfully installed, and it's installed, and that's it. Okay, so if I go into the Ruby interpreter, oh my goodness, what's going on here? Let's go up. The gem spec is not valid. Thank you. Please fix it. Okay. Do you want to tell me why it's not valid? Contains so this is an error I actually got a couple of weeks ago when I was building this, and it's saying that this gem contains itself, so please do not include it when you build the gem. And I had a little workaround for this. I think what we're doing here is when we're adding the files to the gem, here we're saying don't include the empty files, and I'm going to say, actually, let's just check the one that I've already built, because we don't want to mess around with this. I think go back to my this is the one that I wanted to see, because this one I fixed. You see, I added a little condition here to basically say, do not add yourself, please. If it's a .gem, you don't need to add it. So let's change that. So this is one of the things that generated code, because of reasons, or doesn't get. I think there's probably a way to change this in the generator. And so let's test that out. So first we want to build it. Files. What are you saying? Invalid gem spec undefined method files. Oh yeah, because this is called spec, and here it's just called S. So let's just put it back to S and run it again. Okay, it's been built. So we're gonna install it. Gem install, OpenAPI. Hello. Oh my God. This happens to me all the time. Every time I try to do this, it's like, stop it. Okay. Gem install OpenAPI. I'm going to install it. And now I'm going to open the interpreter, which is what I wanted to do. Now it didn't give me any errors, so I should be able to require that gem. And I assume it's called is it called just OpenAPI client? Yep, that's the name. We haven't changed anything at this point. So true. So here I should be able, for example, to create a store. So this is where the experience might be a little weird. What I would like to be able to do is do something like open API client, and then here come on. Here I'm able to see all the different models. If I go like this, okay, but what's going on? I just want to be able to, here, these are all the different models, class method, instance method, blah, 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 right? I want to be able to create a store. So can I just do, okay, so apparently I can do stores API, and then what? I need to instantiate that, apparently. With what? Can I do it empty? Apparently I can. And I get a bunch of stuff. Let me put this into a variable. Stores API. There we go. So the stores API, does it have, okay, then I can do stores API dot create store, and then I pass the body and some options. And the way I would pass the body, I would like to think I can do it as a hash. So something like this. No, couldn't connect to server. Of course you couldn't connect to server. You know why? Because it's not running. So let's just run that. I think I have my command here. So yeah. So I have opened my OpenFGA server. I'm going to run it from a Docker container. And the API is going to be running on the port 8080. So let's run that. Okay. We have our server running. And so if I try to create a store again, I get a different error saying something. I haven't passed any information about where is my server running, but I was able to instantiate this without anything. So maybe I can pass this something. So I'm going to dig into the stores. Wait, is this mine? Yeah. The stores API. What does this receive? This receives an API client. And the API client, it's initialized with some configuration. So this is where the things got interesting. I have to create a configuration and then an API client so I can call the stores API. So, and let's see the configuration to see how do I create this. It has the URL. Okay, so the configuration is where everything about the host, the base path, and all of that is the API key as well. Okay, so let me get to the constructor. Here it is. Host. So by default is taking localhost. I wonder what happens if I do stores API.host. There's no method, so I don't have a getter for this. I only have attribute accessor, which only creates, accessor? I always forget. Accessor, no, attribute reader creates the get, attribute writer, the setter. Accessor should give me both, but maybe I don't have one for the host, which is fine. So I'm gonna see what can I look into here. Should be able to do host, no? Or base path. Oh, this is configuration. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, let's just create some configuration, some very basic configuration. So I'm going to say config. It's going to be open API client configuration new, and then what does that happen if I just do it like that? It just gives me all the default. So localhost, HTTP, and what is, for example, the base URL? Just localhost. Okay, so one thing we need to change is we need to say the host is actually, do I pass the whole thing? Let's localhost 8080. Is this correct? No, wrong number of arguments. Okay, how do I pass these arguments? Yield self if block giving. I hate this. It's always so confusing to me, I swear. But let me see. How do I initialize you? So if I do, you can do the default configuration is what I just did, right? Just pass nothing. Can I just, this is weird. What else? Is there anything in the README that will help me? So you see, so far, regarding the experience, I'm like, okay, how do you do this? This is all about generating the gem and stuff, which we already did. And then we have some documentation about it. Yeah, we don't, there's not much in the generated README. Let's close this. So going to the configuration. I want to pass stuff to this. And if I can't pass it like this, can I pass it like this? Is this even valid in Ruby? No. Can I pass it as a hash? Like so. Is this a thing? No. Wrong number of arguments given, 1, expected 0. Okay, so config is this. And so I can do config.host and say localhost 8080. Or that change, localhost 8080. And so if I do config.base URL, okay, this should work if I try to call my API again. So let's test that. Aha, here it is, stores API. Well, I do need to pass this new configuration to this endpoint, but for that I need to create an API client. So let's call this API client, and this should be under OpenFGA client, API client, and then what does this get inside? Host is localhost. Okay, we want to create this, but we also want to pass the configuration we just said. So I could do that and read that. Okay. And so if I want to call my stores API, did I instantiate it? I don't remember. Let me find out. Before creating the store, I'm going to say, I'm going to create this new with my new API client. And then let me see what stores API is. It's a bunch of stuff with that host. Okay, so I should be able to create a store in theory, like this one. Okay, that worked. And if I go to my Docker here, I see the raw request with the response. So that worked. So things that I had to do, I had to create config. Whoop. Then I had to create an API client instance with that configuration. And then finally create an instance of the stores API with that API client. So I'm able to make that call. So, okay, that's not terrible. It's just maybe tedious to do it like this. But let's see how that would look in my actual code. Now we're going to do something I haven't really done in a while. I don't remember if I've done this before, but I want to use this gem that I created locally into my project so I can actually make the calls. Not this one, this one. Should we ask our good friend ChatGPT for this? Because I really don't remember. Or Copilot. Maybe Copilot can help us. Let's see. I have a bunch of stuff here. What's this? Can I clear? Show chats. Oh, I just want to clear it. Okay. I want to, where do I want to? I want to add a gem that I built locally into this gem file. Let's see. To add a locally built gem into your gem file, you can use the gem method with the path option to specify the path to your gem. For example, if your gem is located here, you can add it like this. Okay, let's test it. Make sure to replace blah, 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 with that and then run bundle install. Okay, let's run this. Let's put it here in development and test because we're just testing this. Get over there, Copilot. So actually I'm gonna close it. Gem. It's called OpenAPI client, and the path is here. Let's close this. This is the path for my gem. So I'm going to change that to, and the gem is called OpenAPI client. And according to Copilot, this should work when I run bundle install. So let's see. Let's go to Rails API, and here we're gonna run bundle install. Okay, this path does not exist. Does it not? OpenFGA Ruby OpenAPI, and then here I have this OpenAPI client. Maybe let's specify it with the number. Is that what it wants? Maybe. Bundle. Okay, wait, in the wrong folder. Rails API. Bundle install. Okay. How about we give this to Copilot and see what happens? Please provide the correct path to your gem. Thanks. Literally what I did, but it's not working. Make sure my local gem with the actual name, blah, blah, blah. Okay, enough with Copilot. I'm Googling because sometimes the path to does not exist. So the path to local gem does not exist. Custom local gem, gem not found, could not find. Let's see. This is, it only has one answer. No. How do I specify local.gem files in my gem file? Okay, this has 300 thingies here. So specifying a path. So gem blah, path blah. Okay. Alternatively, specifying a Git attribute will install the gem from a remote Git repository. So what I have here should work, apparently, because apparently, do you not want me to pass this? Like, are you smart enough to do this like this? Let's see. Oh, okay. So that was the thing. I was just passing the name of the gem as well, and it just wanted the folder. Okay, it was installed, so that's good news. This is good. Okay. Now let's go to the file where magic is happening. So how would I refactor this? First of all, let me go to another branch because I'm going to break this. I'm going to go to test open API generated SDK. That's just in case G go it means git checkout minus B for me. So I'm just going to a new branch. I use a lot of aliases for git. And no, I do not use clients in VS Code and stuff. I prefer to use the terminal. Call me crazy, but or old school. Either way, I prefer to do it like that. Okay, so my OpenFGA service, has a helper function to make a post request, because here I think I was only using making post requests to create a store, create the authorization model, and whatnot. So that's okay. I'm not gonna need to use this, but I'm not gonna delete it just yet. I'm just gonna minimize it for now. So to create a store, then I should be able to do something like response is going to be open API. Okay, no, let's calm down. Let's chill. Let's initialize all the stuff that we need to initialize, actually. So let's see. Random name for now. Come on. Make a request. That's not the suggestion I'm looking for. Name for this method. Init stuff, because I'm not created. So we said we need a config, we need an API client, and we need config API client, and then we can start calling. I know, and we have the open API client. So we need these three things, right? So the first thing is the configuration. Thank you very much. Open API client configuration, new. Okay. This I can pass this as a block. That's nice. Thank you. So basically, we're creating a new configuration with the FGA API URL that I have in my environment variables, which is localhost 8080. That's nice. So let's see if this works. Cool. I don't think I'm gonna pass anything else for now. Then for my API client, thank you. I need an API client, open API. There's so many open API client new with that configuration. And then I think I can just create my open API. Default API? What's this default API? I'm curious. Let me go back to the... did I close it? I did, didn't I? Let me open it. No, I don't want that. Can I open it from here in a new window? Bueno. So, this is my one. Carla, you need to focus, please. Closed everything now. New window, please. Okay. Here I want to see the generated one. So, this one. Thank you. And allow me to zoom in. So here, this Open API client am I looking at the same code? Yeah, okay. Apparently there's a default API. That's what I wanted to look into. Where is that? Or it's just Copilot messing with me. I'm just gonna ignore that. I feel that was like some Copilot random thing. Let's go back to my lovely code. Okay. I don't have no default API here. So here, I'm just going to say stores API. And now this class, I was making it using self and whatnot, so I cannot really instantiate this. So let's change that. I'm going to say this is now going to be the initialize method. And I don't think I need to pass anything, but I will make these variables instance variables. I might not even need their source API here because I'm going to be doing stuff later, but definitely the configuration in the API client. So when I create a store, I can do OpenFGA servers new, initialize it with this information, and then instead of doing make post request, blah, 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 what I want to do is response. Is going to be open API client stores API new, pass the API client that I created, create store with the name expenses, just like that, and see what this does. I'm going to comment that out and I'm going to put a binding price here. So I need to go back to where I call my OpenFGA servers. Actually, when I call my create store, that's what I want right now. And that is, am I not using this? That's weird. I think it's in window. Oh, yes. I remember this. So in this particular project, what I was doing is I wanted to create a store and an authorization model just once. And so the decision I made was to do that in a rake task. And so if you were to deploy this project to production, let's say, one of your rake tasks would be to create a store in the authorization model. So that is right here. And let's minimize the other ones. So what's happening here is I have the task create store and model, and the store ID is OpenFGA service create store. I can no longer call it by that. So I'm going to instantiate the OpenFGA service, and then here I can do service.create store and pass the name. Am I passing the name? I mean, I'm not, but I think I like the idea of passing the name instead of like, just putting it there. So, okay, let's see if this works. Here I'm gonna say expenses. And yeah, let's see what this does. Let's run this task. So if I want to see my tasks, I think it's Rails minus tasks, if I recall correctly. Is it with rake? Okay, yeah, I have a bunch of stuff, but I'm interested in only these three. Check authorization model, create and store model. So this is how I would call this. And I want to pass the name as, I'm passing it here. Okay, whatever. I'm not going to overcomplicate this. I just want to test to see if this works. We'll see. I should get a breakpoint where I put the binding price, but I didn't. I got an error saying, undefined a local variable or method config for OpenFGA service, blah, 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 blah. Did you mean add config? Yes, I did. Thank you very much. So that is here. And yeah, okay, let's see. Okay, so we're going to the binding price. So let's see what the response is. So this response is an OpenAPI client create store response that has, so I'm able to do things like response.id, response.name, which is cool. I'm not gonna lie. I really like that it is like this. Now, the way you call it and stuff, I'm not a fan of, but I think you can have like a wrapper around that to basically make it prettier. But I'm not like upset about it. Okay, that wasn't very traumatic, was it? To change this, and if this is gonna give us an error because obviously I'm getting rid of the response. But here, what I was like very roughly doing was that if this is a success, just return the ID. Um, Curious to see. I'm gonna remove the wine and pry and this. And so if I wanted to return this, I guess I just needed to do response dot ID. And I wonder about error handling and stuff, but let's try it like this. So, I mean, I did reduce, and let's call this store because that's more. This should still work even though we haven't changed the other stuff. And it did. It created the store in the authorization model. Okay, let's refactor the authorization model one because obviously the store is kind of like easy because the request body is simply the name. Now, for the authorization model though, the request body is actually way more complicated. So I'm looking forward to see how to do it with the generated code. So I think I have my request body here. Here it is. So this is the request body to create a new authorization model. Basically, I think you have like two main things. You have the type definitions. And so this is where you define all the types of your authorization model. In this case, we have user and we have report. Those are the main ones. And then for each type, you have the relations. In the case of the user, you have the relation can manage and the relation manager. So then you have more information about is this relation a directly related user type, with under which condition, and so on and so forth. And so for the report, we have the submitter relation, the can management. But as you can see, this is a very long JSON, and this is just for two types. So imagine if you are working on your authorization system, which I'm going to assume that it's going to have more than two types and more than two entities. More than two relations per entity, you're going to have a pretty big file here. And so parsing that, how I was doing it, might be a little bit annoying. So I was basically reading the JSON file and sending that just like that to the API. So I want to see how to do this with this generated code. So let's get rid of this. And to create the authorization model, I need the store ID. So I'm just going to pass it. And what I would need to do is, let's call this authorization model. And I would need to do OpenAPI client dot authorization model API, and then instantiate that with my API client, and then create the authorization model. Wait, this is going over there. I don't like it. Create authorization model with this store ID, and then here Copilot decided just to pass my JSON file like that. I'm not sure if this is how you do it, but we're gonna test it out and see what we get. I'm gonna comment everything and put a nice binding price here. Go back. I don't know if Rubicop is gonna like that I put that there, but we'll see. Let's see what this does. On the find method, create authorization model for OpenFGA server class. Oh yeah, I didn't change it in the rake task, right? So I'm just calling it like this, and I need to call it from my instance now. And pass the store ID. Let's see. No method error. On the find method, create authorization model for this. That's what happens when you believe what compiler suggests you without checking. It's probably the right authorization model, the one we want. So let's change that to right. Actually, not even here, just here. And I should probably check what this receives. Do I have that open? I do. So in the authorization models API, we have read, but I want write authorization model. It receives a store ID, a body, and some options. And the body is a write authorization model request type. So that's probably going to give us an error just by running it like this, passing a raw JSON file. Oh, it did it? Okay, let's see what I get here. Authorization model. It actually created it just by by sending the JSON like that. I do want to think that a better way to do this would be to, instead of parsing the JSON like this, would be to actually use the same object that this is expecting, but the fact that it just worked like that, I like it. I'm not gonna lie, I like it. And this created the authorization model apparently. Let's check. Yep, this is my request here. Is it visible from there? It's not. Let's zoom in a little bit more. But yeah, it created here. This is my request, so that worked. Okay, generated code. Something failed. Model can't be blank. Oh, okay. So I was excited because this was parsing the JSON and being smart about it, but it isn't. I think it's still getting like a blank JSON. So instead of passing the body like that, I'm going to use this model. And if we look at this model to see what this is expecting, right. What's the difference between these two? Request and response, the request one. This is expecting a hash. Okay, this code makes me upset, but okay. This is expecting a hash with 3 keys, type definition, schema version, and conditions, which is very similar to the JSON we have. So maybe it's a matter of just converting that into a hash and send it over. So I wonder if we can just go ahead and say model hash and say this is an OpenFGA client to write authorization. Let me just copy the name here. Copy the name from here. It's write authorization model request dot new, and then here do I have, where's the initializer? It receives the attributes, and we know the attributes are being transformed into this, and it's expecting a hash. So if I go ahead, grab this JSON file with all of its parentheses until here. So, and I say model JSON. This is the JSON. I'm missing one parenthesis. Okay, so that's my JSON. And then I want to run authorization model request with model JSON to to hash. Can I do that? I don't remember. Let's Google it. I don't remember. Rails JSON to hash. Okay, but if I'm doing JSON.parse, this is already a hash. So, okay, I already had a hash. So let's just call this model, and then this model request body to be consistent, right? So I'm going to pass the model here. And instead of doing this JSON parse situation here, we want to pass the model request body. And like that, the request body shouldn't be empty. And so we shouldn't get this invalid record situation. So let's test it. Okay, let's see my authorization model. It did create something, but I can only see the ID. So if I finish this, model can be blank. I want to see what my server is receiving, because I'm not sure if it's receiving the whole thing. So you see in the previous one, it's this one. Store ID, and then it's receiving the type definition, relations, blah, 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 blah. I think I want to see here what the right authorization model request object is. Just make sure. So it's the model request body, which looks okay, right? So I can do things like type definitions, and then go even further and do type. Can I do deep symbolize? Is this keys? Does this work? No. Okay, whatever. So in type definitions, I can go even deeper and say like report type. No. Wait, what's this? An array? That's an array. So go to the first one. That's the user one, and then I can keep going. Okay. Okay, so this should work. So the error I'm getting is probably not related to, actually, the error I'm getting is probably related to something else. It's related to my internal information. So let's do something, because now I just want to see if this model was created properly, even without me using this right authorization model request, which can be a little bit annoying. Because I have the feeling that you can really just pass the JSON, if you know what I mean. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kill my server, so I lose all of the previous data that I had there. And then I'm going to create a new store. Did something happen here? No. Okay. Then I'm going to create this. Not sure if I removed the binding prime. I did not. So, but this created a store and authorization model. So what I can do is I can go to my localhost and my playground. I think it's on port 3000 or not. Is it not? Ah, it's here, sorry. / playground. Playground. And I should have the store that I just created. So it seems like it's definitely creating the right authorization model. So this is good. Now, my question is, can I just go ahead and not transform this and just pass this as a hash and that's it? Can I just do that? And because of reasons, I'm going to kill my server. I could just delete the store, but you know, I'm lazy. Just want to see if this works. Ah, the binding part again. No? It's okay. We don't care about it right now. Okay, so if I refresh this, I should have the same. Ah, okay, so you can actually pass the JSON like that. That's good. That is good. I don't have any other stores, so okay, that's not so bad. And I don't have to write that code, which I don't particularly love. Interesting. And so here I want to return the authorization model ID. Right, right. And then that should not give an error anymore, I guess. Let's see. On the find method ID for right authorization model, oh, I'm sorry, it's authorization model ID. My bad, it's not ID. Here, this would be like bloop. And now it should work. Yeah, that worked. Okay, so we are over time actually, but I think this was a very productive session for me. I don't know about you, but this was very productive for me. Things that I discovered and liked. Or let's summarize a little bit. We went through, well, let's talk about the important stuff first. We talked about these two books, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen now because I'm not going to stop screen sharing. Okay. So first things first, we talk about these two books about coffee, The Best Coffee at Home by James Hoffmann and El Arte de Café or The Art of Coffee by Sebastian. Oh my God, I can't pronounce this. Just look at it. It looks the same in all of its versions. We talked about those two books and my latte art progress. Then we deep dive into what happened last week, which was implementing the authorization model endpoints. And while doing that, I got into this whole existential questions of, is this offering the best developer experience for whomever is going to use this SDK? And then leading that to today, that led us to today, sorry, where I went into the generated code that the OpenAPI generator gives us when you generate a new SDK, test that out and see how it feels to use it. Because one thing is how it feels to read that code and understand that code, but when people use this code, or like when developers are going to use that, they're not necessarily going to dive into the code and try to understand it. They just want to use it. They just want good documentation and overall a good developer experience. So I don't think the developer experience was bad at all. Like, I think I was very much into the how this code feels and reads versus how it feels to actually use it. So that was a learning. I'm going to push this code into this branch. I mean, I'm going to finish with the other methods that I have. So to update a relation and also call the list object endpoints and whatnot. So I'm going to push that into a branch. I'm probably going to leave that in a comment of this stream on LinkedIn, most likely. So if you're watching this on YouTube, go find it on LinkedIn. And yeah, I mean, I think it was a good experience. Now, the next thing to do, because we're already kind of talking about how it works, generating an SDK versus building it yourself. Next week, I want to talk with someone who has a way more experience than me building SDKs. And so I'm going to have a special guest, one of the OpenFGA maintainers. So stay tuned to look at that event, and I'll see you next week. Thank you for watching. And